Everyone, it's Father Chris, and I'm reading Chapter 3 of Donovan's Word Jar, Donovan's Dilemma. One Friday morning, Donovan was putting a word into his jar when he realized that there was no more room. "I can't get another word in my jar," he said. Donovan went over and sat on his bed. He had a problem. Maybe I should get a bigger jar, he thought. But then, in a little while, I'll just have to get a bigger one. Donovan shook his head. "No, that won't work," he said. "Donovan, Donovan." He heard his mother's voice in the hall. "Come on, it's time for breakfast." "What's taking you so long?" she called. "You'll be late for school." "I'm coming right now." Donovan got up from the bed, grabbed his books from his desk, and ran out of the room. When Donovan entered the kitchen, his mother was sitting at the table reading the paper. His breakfast was on the table. "Mom, I've got a problem," Donovan said, as he put his books on the counter and then slid into the chair across from her. Donovan picked up his fork and began to eat his pancakes. "There isn't space for another word in my word jar," he said between bites. "You've collected that many words?" his mother asked. She sounded pleased. "Yes," Donovan answered in a proud voice. "Well, perhaps you should get a bigger jar," she suggested. "Mom, I thought of that, but I'll only have to get an even bigger one when that jar gets filled," Donovan explained. "You're right, honey. Why don't you give this problem a little more thought? Maybe you'll come up with a better solution," his mother said, getting up from the table. "Don't forget to put your plate in the dishwasher. I'm going upstairs to check on your sister." Donovan watched his mother put his lunch bag on the counter next to his books. "Donovan, don't forget to eat the raw vegetables in your lunch," his mother said as she left the kitchen. "Thanks, Mom," Donovan called out. Then he gathered up his books and lunch and started out for school. His mother was right. If he thought hard enough, maybe he could solve his problem. That afternoon, when school was over, Donovan decided to ask Mrs. Pankey's advice. She always seemed to have good ideas. He waited until everyone else left the classroom. He wanted to have all of Mrs. Pankey's attention. Donovan walked over to Mrs. Pankey. She was writing a list of presidents on the board. "Hi, Mrs. Pankey," he said. "Hello, Donovan. Are you staying after school?" she asked in surprise. "I have a problem, and I thought you could help me," Donovan said. "Maybe I can. Why don't you give me the details?" Donovan told Mrs. Pankey about his collection and explained his problem. When he finished, she wrote on the board in big, bold letters, "Donovan's Definitive Dictionary." Mrs. Pankey began to explain to Donovan all the things he needed to do to start his own dictionary. "Mrs. Pankey, that's going to take a lot of time, isn't it?" he asked. "It certainly will," she answered in her best teacher's voice. "Your idea is great, and I love that title. But I need a solution now," Donovan said. "Well, why don't you think about it a little more?" Mrs. Pankey suggested, as she turned around and went back to writing on the board. "Donovan," Mrs. Pankey added, "let me know what you decide." That evening, after Donovan finished his homework, he went downstairs to the basement to his father's workshop. He liked being in his father's workshop. It always smelled and sounded like important things were going on down there. His father was kneeling on the basement floor painting a long sign. His father used to work for a company that put new roofs on buildings, but in a week he was going to open up a shop of his own. Donovan read the sign. "Greg's Roofing Service, I've got you covered." "Dad, are you real busy?" Donovan asked. "Not too busy, partner. I am just starting to work on the sign for the new shop." Donovan watched his father carefully fill in the letter G with orange paint. Dad, do you think you're going to have your sign ready by the time your shop opens? Donovan asked. Yes, I think I will. I plan to work on it a little every night. Is there something I can help you with, or are you just visiting? His father asked. Donovan explained his problem to his dad, and he told him about Mrs. Pankey's suggestion. His father was quite quiet for a few moments, and then he said, Why don't you take Mrs. Pankey's advice? Dad, that idea would take too long, Donovan said impatiently. Can you think of something I can do right now? As Donovan talked, his father started to slowly fill in the letter R. Donovan was about to ask his question again when his father finally spoke. Partner, I think you should put those words in a shiny new file box. That way, you could put them in alphabetical order, and whenever you needed a word from your collection, you would be able to find it right away. Donovan's father looked at him and smiled. That's a good idea, Donovan said. But won't I just have to get a bigger box when that gets filled? Yes, I guess you would, his father answered, painting the letter E with a steady hand. Well, maybe you'd better give it a little more thought, he suggested. Sorry, I can't help you. Don't worry about it, Dad, Donovan said as he walked up the stairs. Good luck with your sign, Dad. It looks great.